Hi, I'm John Molesky, host of Dialogue. We're on the set where we just completed recording this week's program with our guest Chuck Lewis. And Charles Lewis is one of the premier investigative reporters in the world. I think, you were named one of the 30 most significant investigative reporters since World War I. Is that correct?
That's true.
I don't want to embarrass you, but that is quite an honor.
Well, it is an honor.
Yeah,
and I think about 11 of them are dead.
Well, you move up in the ranks.
Yeah.
So, I want a couple things. We've been looking at clips from your new site. Tell us about investigative reporting and how this site came about. Or investigating power, I should say. I'm sorry.
It came about because I wanted to talk to these journalists honestly before they die. And I actually talked to David Halberstam a few days before he did die, and we didn't get to tape it. And two that we did talk to, Daniel Shore and Mike Wallace, have died since the interviews. Right. So I knew that I had to get to some of these iconic figures soon.
How did you pick them? How did you decide?
Well, it's a little bit...
it's tough.
It's very tough. That's definitely subjective. I will acknowledge it fully. It was not based entirely on awards. It was based on important stories that I thought generally the profession acknowledges were terribly important. There was a race beat book that won the Pulitzer Prize about civil rights reporting that is a seminal work about great reporting. And I was told by the authors of the book the most respected black reporter living today is Moses Newson, so I made a beeline for Moses Newson. So stuff like that. And Woodward and Bernstein are kind of obvious. Seymour Hersh with My Lai is obvious. But some are not as obvious. There's one man who's won 3 Pulitzers for investigating corporations, which is very unusual and very tough. Walt McDonich at the New York Times.
Let me ask you about two others, Bartlett and Steele. Tell us who they are, and we'll look at a clip, speaking of investigating corporations.
Well, I mean, Bartlett and Steele are essentially, to lay people, they are the Woodward and Bernstein of financial and business reporting in America. They both worked together for 40 years, and they have done 10 or so books. I have been working with them directly at the Investigative Reporting Workshop for the last 2 years, and we're trying to develop a feature film documentary with an Academy Award-winning director in the next year or two, based on their book. Their book is coming out literally in the next month.
Well, they were so far out ahead of the story of the financial meltdown in so many ways.
They were. They were the first to notice the dichotomy between rich and poor and the 1%ers and all that. They first disclosed that in a 9-part series in the Philadelphia Inquirer in 1991, 400,000 reprints. The public went nuts. And 600 or 700,000 copies of the book that came out later, multiple documentaries throughout the 90s. So 20 years before we started talking about this problem, what happened to the middle class, they were way ahead of the rest of the country, no question.
Well, let's share with our YouTube viewers a clip with Bartlett and Steele.
That's great. What is the great reluctance to take on corporate power? I mean, all the issues you've been writing about, they're all still here. In fact, one could argue they're worse than ever.
Worse than when we started. You can make that case.
I'm not trying to say it's not your fault by any means.
No, but
we did what we could, Chuck.
I could make that case. I mean, there's no question about it.
But isn't it, it's a little bit frustrating, isn't it? I don't understand where the media is here. I mean, you've always been out front on this, but where are these other people?
You raise a really good question, and we've talked a lot about this. Is it the general turmoil is affecting are people just trying to hold on to jobs now rather than settling back to concentrate on a lot of these bigger issues and things that need to be attacked? Right. Are we in just a different era where everybody's sort of halfway satisfied? I don't know the answer to this, but your description is absolutely on target. There isn't as much outrage out there. It's not just journalists, though. There's a general level of a sort of muted outrage or not as much outrage over some things as there should be. Is this because people have been disappointed, because they thought some changes would come to pass but didn't, or people have just withdrawn from national politics on certain political things? We don't know the answer to that. It may be generational. Many dramatic things in this country happen over time when there's some cataclysm. There's a depression. There's huge health and safety issues, turn of the century, people being poisoned by patented medicines. So you get the FDA Act. In the 30s, you had the SEC come into being because there's so much chicanery in a lot of the companies. So our history as a democracy is that, and sometimes that fuels a lot of this interest.
Right.
But there's no 1890s spirit out there right now, though there could be and should be.
It gets back to this whole central question about why people don't care more, or where is the outrage. I don't even know what will it take? How bad does it have to get before people are mobilized?
Well, you know, it's such an important question. A few years ago, people would say, well, there just needs to be a big scandal. Well, the problem is we're having scandals all the time. Yeah, I mean, I think the Iraq War was a scandal, personally. Honestly, I do. And the financial meltdown, the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression, where it actually was based on fraud and self-gain by various folks. It was a preventable disaster, essentially. And it was the case of non-regulation, clearly, or not close regulation of those folks. And frankly, very few of them have been prosecuted, I've noticed. And so we have these continual shots across the bow that tell us we have significant dysfunction in our democracy, and power is run amok, in this case, corporate power, financial business power. And we don't have, you know, it's a long conversation. We have a Congress and a political system that is not unrelated. You know, it's a long, involved story, but becoming a politician, being involved with the parties, they're all closely tethered to the financial sector. There's a reason no one wants to go deep on this, because everyone's got a little bit on them themselves. We're all in it here, and when you have capitalism and democracy trying to coexist, as we do in our country, lately capitalism's been winning, and democracy, including reining in the appetites of certain folks. If men were angels, there'd be no need for government, the Federalist Papers. Clearly they're not angels, and government has really not been doing what it ought to be doing in recent years. Let's really be direct here. And the press in general, the media in general, is falling on difficult times financially itself. And so the press has never been all that aggressive about corporations. You go back to the history of the Pulitzer Prizes, among the fewest Pulitzers given out are investigating business. Could that be because they depended on advertising? I would say it's directly related.
You would say that.
Yeah, I would say that. So we have a problem here, and we have had it for years, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, you know, look, if you're watching this, that means you're already on YouTube. And so if you've had enough of, you know, piano playing cats or the latest child sensation from Britain's Got Talent, go to Investigating Power, check out the website. You can see a lot more of Chuck's work and a lot more of people like Bartlett and Steele. And then also, if you'd like to see the entire dialogue program, the discussion with Chuck, visit us on the web at wilsoncenter.org. When you find the tab for television and video and dialogue, click that and you can find your way to the entire 30-minute interview. Thanks.